Okay, guys, so this is going to be the review for your quiz. So hopefully this will help you do well on your quiz. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email. But I am going to work out the answers to this so that you can make sure you are understanding what all is going on here. All right, so very first thing we want to do is it's asking you to simplify. So we're adding these two things. If you notice, make sure you pay attention to the fact that it's addition in the middle. And we want to add like terms. So when we're adding like terms, it means we have to have the same base or letter and the same exponent. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it. So 7x squared plus 2x minus 4 plus 6x squared minus 7x plus 3. We didn't have to change anything because that is addition. So when you distribute that 1 to everything, it just stays the same. All right, so if we're looking at our like terms, we have 7x squared and 6x squared. So when we add that, 7 plus 6 is 13x squared. Then the next like terms are 2x and negative 7x. So 2 minus 7 is negative 5x. And my last set of like terms is negative 4 and positive 3. Negative 4 plus 3 is negative 1. So then this would be my answer on number 1. All right, if you're looking at number 2, it has a negative. It's subtracting them. So this is a negative 1 in front of the second set of parentheses. So we are going to have to distribute that to everything. So if we rewrite what we have 8x squared minus 4x plus 3 minus 3x squared plus 2x minus 6, because all of those are being multiplied by negative 1, so all of them have their signs changed. So now, yet again, we're looking for what are like terms. 8x squared, negative 3x is going to give me 5x squared. Negative 4x, positive 2x is negative 2x. And then last, we are going to do positive 3 minus 6, so negative 3. All right, so that is our final answer here because we have combined all of our like terms. All right, let's look at these next few problems. It's still combining them to basically get your most simplified answer. So if we remember our exponent rules, this is just multiplying. So remember the first thing we do is we want to multiply our whole numbers. So 5 times 3 is 15. Then we have 6x's here and 11x's here. So we're going to add that. 6 plus 11 is going to be x to the 17th. Number 4, same type rule. So we're going to multiply our big numbers first. Negative 7 times 4 is negative 28. Then we want to look at our like bases. So we have x to the 3rd here and x to the 7th. So we're going to add that. 3 plus 7 is 10. And then we want to do the same thing with the y's. We have 6y's here, 2y's here. 6 plus 2 is y to the 8th. So that is your final answer. On 5, it's a little bit different. Remember, when we have a power on the outside, we have to distribute it to everything on the inside. But first, we need to write a 1 on this 8 because remember, everything has an exponent. So I'm going to distribute it to each of them. So I'm going to now have 8 squared, x to the 8th. Remember, you are multiplying them because when we distribute, the operation done is multiplication, and y to the 16th. And last thing we need to do to simplify is 8 squared is 64. And there's my final answer. These are the other final answers. There's just nothing else written down. All right, let's look at our next ones. This one's a little bit more complex for number 6 because we do have to distribute to everything in both sets of parentheses. So the very first thing you want to do is go ahead and write in your ones. So bad at writing in those ones. All right, but distribute. And remember, so this 2 is going to go to everything in the first set of parentheses. And the 4 is going to go to everything in the second set of parentheses because that's the one that has the 4 on it. So the first one is going to be 2 squared, x to the 6, y to the 4. And the second one is 3 to the 4th. Remember, this is multiplication here. X to the 16th, y to the 20th. Remember, you always multiply those exponents. So now we want to simplify as much as we can. So 2 squared is 4. We have 6x's here and 16x's here. So that's going to be x to the 22. Then I have 4 y's here and 20 y's here, so that's going to be y to the 24. And last thing I want to do is 3 to the 4th power, which is, sorry, I got to get my calculator, is 81. So then last thing that we need to do is multiply our two numbers together. So 81 times 4 is going to be 324. And then x to the 22nd, y to the 24th. Those just come down. That's my final answer there. All right, remember we talked about in class, anything to the 0 power is 1 every single time. Look how easy that one is. Next. Okay, with division, we have to be careful and pay attention to the big numbers. They need to be divided. So 6 divided by 3, so think of it this way, 6 divided by 3 is 2. It's a nice whole pretty number. Then we want to look at the next set, so we want to look at the x's. So we have x to the 5th over x squared. Remember, we subtract them, so x to the 5 minus 2 comes x to the 3rd. And then the y's is y to the 9 over y to the 2nd. So that's y to the 9 minus 2, which is y to the 7. So since they're all positive, the answer is just going to be written in a straight line. So it's 2 x to the 3rd, y to the 7th. All right, we want to look at these next ones, and we are simplifying. Remember, with these divisions, you do have to do the subtraction. So it's going to be x to the 2 minus 6, which is going to be x to the negative 4. We'll simplify that in a minute. Y to the 9 minus 2, which is y to the 7. And z to the 1 minus 7. Remember, if anything doesn't have an exponent, it has a 1 automatically. So that's z to the negative 6. So here's the way you want to think about this for the final answer. So if it has a negative, that would have been like on top of the fraction. So the opposite of that is moving it to the bottom. So it's going to go to the bottom to become positive. The y has a positive 7, so it needs to go to the top to stay positive. And z has a negative 6, so we want to write it on the bottom so that it can become positive. So therefore, this is my final answer. All right, if we're looking at number 10, same idea. So x to the 8 minus 4, which is positive 4, x to the 4. So y to the negative 3 minus negative 4. So remember, minus minus ends up being a plus. So that's negative 3 plus 4. So that's y to the 1. And then last one, z to the 6 minus negative 5, which minus minus is still going to be plus. So that's z to the 11. So they all have positive exponents, so we're not going to have a fraction. So it's x to the 4, y to the 1, z to the 11. You don't have to have that 1 there if you don't want it, so you don't have to write it. Okay, last one. So the first thing we have is 8 over 18. We need to simplify that fraction. The biggest number that goes into each of those is 2. So it's going to be 4 over 9. Then we want to go on with our letters. So I have x to the negative 2 minus negative 3, which ends up being plus. So negative 2 plus 3 is positive 1. Then I want to go y, so 6 minus negative 2 minus a negative ends up being plus. 6 plus 2 is y to the 8. Last one is z. So z to the negative 3. Oh, it cut it off. So it's negative 3. I must have done that in my picture on accident. Hopefully you have yours on your sheet. That should be a 9. That's my mistake there. So negative 3 minus 9. So negative 3 minus 9 is z to the negative 12. Since we have a negative exponent, we do have to deal with that by having a fraction, which is a good thing because we kind of already have a fraction with our numbers. So let's have our final answer here. So we have a 4 on top, 9 on bottom. X has a positive 1 as the exponent, so it's going to go on top to stay positive. Y has a positive exponent, so it's going to stay on top or go on top to stay positive. And Z has a negative exponent, so we're actually going to move it to the bottom so that it can become positive. So that is my final answer. All right, this was the next lesson. This was what we learned on Monday. So it's asking you to rewrite it as a radical. So because we started out with a fractional exponent, you want to go ahead and write your radical in and write in your x. So remember, the number inside is always the numerator. So inside is going to be 3, outside is going to be 7, and that's the answer. All right, if we look at 13, it is a negative exponent. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and write that as a fraction, or write it as 1 over 8x to the 3/7, because the negative means it moves to the bottom. So now we can go ahead and rewrite that as a radical. So 1 over the radical of 8x. And then inside your radical is going to be your numerator 3. And outside on the little stoop is going to be the 7. So then this would be your final answer. Remember, you have to have the radical in the final. All right, number 14. Remember, everything has an exponent. So the 6 has an exponent of 1. So because it's not a fraction, it actually goes outside the radical. So then we have x. Inside is going to be your numerator of 9. Outside is your denominator of 2. And you don't have to write the 2. You could write this like this, and it would be just as correct as the one in burgundy. All right, the next one says that we are rewriting them as fractional exponents. So we got to get rid of the radical. So my base is going to be 2x, and I am going to leave it in parentheses because it's in parentheses in there, so it needs to be in parentheses out of there. So remember, it's always numerator from the inside, so 11 goes on top of the fraction. Denominator's on the outside, so 3 is on the bottom. All right, this one's a little funky because it is in a fraction already. So let's go ahead and change out the radical first. So it's going to be 1 over x to the 4 over 2. And the reason it's 4 over 2, so remember the numerator comes from the inside, the denominator comes from the outside. But if there's nothing written here, it's an automatic 2. So now to move this to the top of the fraction, I'm going to write it as 4, or not 4, sorry, x to the negative 4 halves. Remember, for it to come from the bottom to the top, the sign does have to change. All right, last one. I want to go ahead and write in a 1 on my 8 as my exponent because we need to think of this as two separate radicals because this has a 1. So this is going to be 8 to the 1/5 and x to the 2/5. All right, and these last few problems are just like what we did on Tuesday in class. So if you are looking here, remember you have to get the radical by itself to be able to solve for x. So the very first thing we need to do is minus 19 on both sides. So we have the radical of 3x plus 19 equals 1. Then we need to square both sides to get rid of that radical. So 3x plus 19 equals 1. Then we need to solve for x. Remember, reverse PEMDAS. So minus 19 on each side. 3x equals negative 18. Divide by 3. So x equals negative 6. All right, this one's the same process as the last one. Hopefully y'all have worked out these a little bit while you tried them before you watched this video, because it will help you significantly to just be checking your work and seeing your mistakes rather than just watching me do it, because remember, math is not a spectator sport. You need to be practicing this to do well at it. It's the only way that you will get better at math is to actually practice. So then we have, hopefully you understood what I did. I added 13 to each side, and then I squared each side to get rid of the radical. 3 squared is 9 minus the 33. So then it's negative 24, and then 6x. So divide, oops, I don't know what I was trying. Divide by 6, x equals negative 4. This one looks just a little bit funky. It's not any more different than the other ones we've done. It's just that it's kind of written backwards. So you're still going to need to get rid of the radical by squaring both sides. So 4 squared is 16 equals 2x. Still divide by 2 on both sides. X equals 8. Don't let it fool you just because the x is on the wrong side. Don't get confused here. All right, this one is a little bit more complicated, but remember, we have to get the x by itself. So the first thing we're going to do is add 7 on both sides. Then this 5 in the front is really multiplying by that, so we want to get rid of that. So x to the 3/4 equals 27. Then I need to rewrite this fractional exponent. So I'm going to write it as the 4th root of x to the 3rd. Remember, that's what we were just doing before. Now we need to get rid of the radical. I'm going to do that over here. So remember, I do that by raising it to the 4th power. Remember, you got to do it on both sides. So 27 to the fourth power is a pretty big number. 531,441 equals x to the third. But we're not quite finished. We need to take the cube root to get x, because we just want x. We don't want x to the third. And that answer is 81. These will all be whole number answers. All right, hopefully you see that there's not anything to add or subtract or multiply or divide here. We just need to get rid of that 3 first. So we need to raise both sides to the third power. And I know that makes the number kind of big. So x to the fifth equals 32,768. Then we need to do the fifth root of both sides. So x is going to equal 8. All right, last problem. We need to get rid of this 2 first because it's not underneath the radical, so it's got to go. You got to get out of here. So equals 2. Now I have the radical by itself, so I can square both sides. So 5x plus 44 equals 4. Now I still need to finish solving, so I'm going to minus 44 on both sides. 5x equals negative 40. Last step, I need to divide by 5, so x equals negative 8. All right, hopefully this helped you understand, and I'm sorry for the length. It was just to make sure I could explain each problem to you. Please make sure you are ready for your quiz. Make sure you look over this. Email me if you have any questions or need any help with anything. Have a good day, guys.